FM22 has been out for 6 months, almost exactly, which means it is time for me to make the video about whether FM22 is actually worth buying it or not. And I have, of course, a list and a way we're going to do this. We are going to start with grading the new major features that Football Manager dropped, things like the Data Hub on an A to F scholastic grade. Then we're actually going to go through whether it is worth buying or not, and at the end, we're going to talk about what direction Football Manager is headed based off of the improvements the last couple of years. So the new features for Football Manager this year, we're taking them as the headline features from the website. So I'm taking my choice out of it. This is footballmanager.com/features, headline features. Here we go. The first one is on-pitch authenticity. This is the inclusion of some of the stuff I've been begging for a while, which is making it more like a TV broadcast, right? Where you have not only a cooler score bug in the top left, but you've got the whole boom, name, team, scored a goal thing. I need one of those, like, every time I start a stream, you know? And a goal scored by Zealand Shannon, checking in at 6'2", 220 pounds, because he can't stop eating Girl Scout cookies. But look at that movement. He's been doing his Pilates. He's been doing his yoga. That's absolutely sensational. Let's just keep that placard up and let this man dance. As cool as the on-pitch authenticity stuff is, it really doesn't go that far, so I'm going to go ahead and grade the on-pitch authenticity is like a C+. It is an improvement to the game. I'm not going to degrade it, but it doesn't really go far into it. It's basically what you see in the picture for the headline feature, right? You get like 1 or 2 cool shots while you're walking into the match. The second improvement, though, was like the name brand feature for FM22, and that was the introduction of this Data Hub. Now, the Data Hub is an insanely cool idea. Football Manager has had these underlying analytics in it for a while, but has brought in actual real life like analytic firms to help create those analytics in Football Manager so that things can be realistic. And the Data Hub is a great way to present a lot of those analytics that most people didn't know was in the game, or add a few more analytics in there, because both of those things happened. I have found myself not using it as much as I thought I would, but I'm still looking at the analytics more often than I did before in FM21 and so on and so forth. I'm still looking at those analytics more, even if I'm not using them as much as I thought. Everyone thought the Data Hub was going to be like the coolest thing ever, but it's turned into a better version of the Development Center where you just really don't open it that much, and I'm sure there are a lot of people that do, but outside of deciding which goalkeeper I'm supposed to start based off their XG saved, I don't use it a ton. That doesn't mean it's a problem, though, and I'm not going to grade it as such. I think that the Data Hub's B+. I think it is functional exactly the way that you would want it to be. I think you could make it a little more accessible. Like, instead of having to ask for certain things and then kind of pin it to your analytical screens, if you could just actually have that stuff presented, maybe an option for timed reports in the inbox that you could go through and they're engaging and you can interact with. I think that would be helpful, helping you apply this information. I know they have little write-ups at the bottom and they try to help you apply that information, but providing your staff with an opportunity to communicate directly with you more and present you the stuff they think is relevant would be nice. So that plays into the third headline feature that Football Manager had for FM22, and that was the backroom rewrite, right? They used to get these inbox reports that were not very detailed, and that's been restructured into these things called staff meetings. You might find yourself clicking through these pretty quickly, but the staff meetings are definitely a better idea than the random inbox updates that you would get before. They weren't random, you'd schedule how often they happened, but when you're going through these staff meetings, there's a feeling that you are communicating with your staff. You at least become familiar with the different things they're proposing. I find it weird that you're limited to 3 recommendations on literally every subject. This means that the more often you do staff meetings, the more likely you are to be presented with every piece of relevant information, because if you can only get the top 3 new traits to train on to players, then you're missing out on the opportunity to put traits on other players that you might like. I find that weird, but I like the idea overall, and I would also like to say I thought this was going to be more annoying than it actually ended up being. I think the staff recommendations are annoying. I'd love the opportunity to turn that stuff off and be like, hey, look, boss, I don't really care about my physios because all my physios have freaking 20 physiotherapy. They are essentially doctors, but gods. What are you doing there? While it wasn't a major feature that completely changes your life in the game, it is a B. I'm going to give it a B. I think it's an improvement. And the last headline feature is the Deadline Day drama. The Deadline Day drama my favorite feature in the new game. I thought it was going to be pointless. It's kind of inverted from what I expected originally. You go to the deadline day, you get presented with all this new information, agents are contacting you, there's all these rumors flying around. You get that whole
10 hours remaining
feel while you're going through deadline day, the special feel. Football Manager has gone a great length to create that special feel. I appreciate it. This is an A. It's fantastic. I love deadline day, and business and transfer interactions seem to change on deadline day, which is fantastic. That's the way it's supposed to work and the way that it does work. Closing out with an A, starting with a C+. Obviously, I like certain parts of the game and don't really care about other parts of the game, but there were some surprising issues with Football Manager. And before we actually provide the rating for the game, we need to dive into those, because that's going to go a long way to determining this more than the headline features will. And the first surprise change is the whole transfer system in Football Manager just seems different. From FM21 to FM22, if you love the way transfers work in FM21, I really would hazard, I would caution you against upgrading to FM22. Because the transfer system is very different. In FM21, you could offer out, cancel, offer out, hire. That was like the method of negotiation in FM21. Sometimes teams would follow you up, sometimes they wouldn't. On FM22, it might be more realistic that the negotiating happens on the negotiating screen, but the abrupt change from being able to just offer out constantly and now not being able to do that really adjusted how a lot of people do build your club saves and really adjusted the way that I play the game. Yeah, personally, the transfer market feels a lot different, more specific, and one time only. You can get offers for players and then turn that offer down, and immediately that team is no longer interested in that player, or the financials around the player can change completely. In my save with Wolves, which is the network game on Thursdays, I was offering Adama Traore out for 50-60 million. We got an offer at 47. We're trying to negotiate up, and then we end up selling him for, we ended up swapping him for one of Lelujo's players because the biggest offer we were getting was like 15 to 20 million, and it happened like that. And there really wasn't a lot of conversation. It was very opaque process, in the fact that it's an opaque process and went from a very fluid process. Even if it wasn't open, it was fluid, and you understood more that that opportunity to sell was still going to be there. Now it's opaque. Probably more realistic, still a pretty painful rug pull. If you want to see that whole Adama Traore story, by the way, I made a whole video about that transfer saga in particular. If that keeps happening to you, that should help. And part of what plays into this is the fact that the asking prices in the game, that whole asking price dynamic is crazy. At the beginning of the game, it was super broken. One of the worst parts about FM22, the asking price, the agent would tell you, you go in and set an asking price, right? And you go, oh yeah, he's happy with that asking price, right? And it's right next to where they would be happy with, right? So you go down there and you say, be happy with that asking price. And then they would always come back mad and you'd end up going down to like 5, right? And that was the way you'd get around it. It makes no sense. It's better now. It's still not perfect. Sometimes the player will come out even after the agent sets it and they'll be mad about what their asking price is at. But the whole idea of asking prices has bothered me from the moment it came out, because you cannot offer a player out without them knowing they are being offered out. You can't talk about a player with another club without them knowing that you are talking to that club about that player. And while that's very honorable and morally brilliant, it's also not, I don't think, realistic. I would love to be able to offer a player out to a few clubs without them knowing that I'm offering them out, saying, hey, what might you pay for this guy? Because what happens is, if you want to sell somebody and they don't want to go, which would happen, for example, with somebody like Christian Turden, might not react well to being offered out to clubs. If I offer him out and I can't persuade him to leave, which persuading him to leave is already dangerous. If I offer him out and we don't get the interest that we thought, he's going to get mad we offered him out and he's gone. He's going to get mad and you're going to have to promise out the wazoo to get him to stay. And if you can't make that stick, you don't have the contract length to make that stick, he's just gone. You've committed to selling the player immediately. It's made dynamics a lot harder, as well as the whole transfer setup. And harder doesn't necessarily mean worse, but I do think it's worse when it's this opaque, and especially with the asking price stuff, felt very broken. And that's a very important part of the game. There's also the scouting changes made to the game, where region scouting has become less and less effectual over the last couple of years. Scouting is another one of those incredibly opaque parts of Football Manager. You don't get a lot of information about why or why not your scouts are succeeding. You kind of just have to look out for it for yourself. I made like 5 videos on scouting in Football Manager 22 already. It's very convoluted and took me a very long time to figure out even the best way to try and find a few wonder kids hanging around there. It's just gotten more opaque, I think, and the move away from region scouting was a little unheralded. And then the last unknown detractor that came at us was the match engine. I think the match engine, which we're going to talk about in the good part in a second, did move laterally. I think the match engine moved laterally and away from allowing central play to succeed. What we had in Football Manager 21 was a very viable option to play attacking midfielders with regularity without supporting runs from the midfield. That went away at the start of FM22, and it was all about your wing play, getting into those wider spaces and making something happen. And I don't know if going back to where we were at in FM20 and FM19 is really an improvement, but we just don't see as many through balls or as much of that central play as we used to. But how about the surprise better things? We need to like fire confetti or something. And this actually falls into part of the on-pitch authenticity, at least when you read it on the website. Now, they really did sell the TV stuff when they're talking about this, but they just kind of bundled everything in there. They added the new role, wide center back. They added new dribbling and player movement and the new pressing system intelligence, smarter decision making, all that stuff. They basically sped up the ability of players to make decisions, and you notice that. I think that is fantastic. And you see a couple of animations you've not seen before in Football Manager, some back heel passes and those sorts of things, and it all looks cleaner. And the Match Engine team and Nick Madden have done a great job of progressing the visual aspects of Football Manager over the last couple of years. Whether I think the actual match engine itself has moved forward or laterally, I do think that the visual part of Football Manager in 3D has improved a ton. And that decision making, the quicker decision making, leads to less stupid looking goals. There are still stupid looking goals, but less of them. And there are still stupid looking goals in real life, so can't complain too much. The slicing for the decision making, the improvement of the decision making of players is great. It makes the pressing aspect of Football Manager feel more realistic, and I think is probably the beginning of the end of gegenpress dominance in Football Manager. But a massively important thing and a number one complaint from FM21 that might make FM22 the game you want to buy for the next 6 months is the long ball threat against center backs is gone. Now, Football Manager fixed this in kind of a cop-out way, right? But at least they fixed it. It's better than what we had as an alternative. So when the ball goes long, to a certain extent in Football Manager 22, the front line will just back off and let the defender receive it. Now, this is not entirely realistic, but what happened in the match engine in FM21 was the long ball to a striker working one-on-one against a center back was like 50-50 the center back wins it, and 50-50 the striker is in on goal. So it was not exactly conducive to a good, healthy mental time. That long ball threat is gone. Defenses seem to react a little more naturally in the counterattack as well, and that all goes down to the decision making. I do really, really, really like that stuff. So we have the features, we got the surprise things I don't like, we've got the surprise things that I do like. It all comes together like, should you buy FM22 if you don't have it already? Is it worth it? And the answer is, I'm rating Football Manager 22 as like a B-. So if you are into the data hub, if you're into the analytics driving your decision making, or if you are into having a cleaner, smoother, nicer presentation in the match engine and cleaner, smoother decision making from your players, then it is worth it. Particular Football Manager 22 has been on sale and is on sale the time I'm making this video. It might not be on sale by the time it comes out, but I'll leave the link down in the description if you want to buy it using our code. Obviously, you'll buy whatever you want. Look, Football Manager is just trying to create a realistic management game. The people that work at the company, I know a few of them, they love the game, they're dedicated to the game, they're not just trying to flip games for money, like they're really invested in making a great game. Now, obviously, you know, I've made videos with Nick Madden, he makes the match engine, and the match engine's making tremendous progress. He's got a vision, and even though the middle of the park, advanced playmaker stuff wasn't working earlier in the year, that's gotten better throughout the course of the year. But I also think that Football Manager does not make its game accessible enough. I'm not talking about tutorials. I'm talking about when you're in the game, you kind of have to watch my videos to understand what the heck is happening for certain things. Like scouting, you just don't know what the heck's going on, right? I had to do 3 or 4 tests. This is my job, right? Most people don't have time to figure out how that stuff works, right? With training, I've had to sit down and really figure out, like, put a team together and test this stuff. And, this is the optimal way to approach this for this team. A totally separate note, I think it's striking how different the assistant coach training is to what is optimal. I just think that's interesting. I realize I'm arguing for putting me out of business or making me make more videos like this one where I just make Burnley all 6'11". Rest in peace to Sean Dyke, by the way. He didn't die, he just got sacked. in case you didn't know. Also, do you live under a rock? But I think that would be a great direction for Football Manager to move. And even though it's trying to aggregate data with things like the Development Center and the Data Hub, it's not necessarily making it more interactive and presentable yet. So that would be my main concern with the direction we moved from FM21 to FM22. When I wasn't making videos about Football Manager, I bought it every 3 years. I've debated with people, but I feel like every 2-3 years, you get a really good update to the game when you buy it again. And so now I play it 3,000 hours a year. So here we are. Let me know what you've thought of FM22 in the comments. Don't just like blindly agree with me either. If you think I'm wrong on one thing, right on another thing, didn't bring this up, let me hear about it in the comments, because I want a really balanced discussion about whether FM22 is worth it to upgrade from FM21. You can write the script to your own video in the comments, and I'll read it. I'll see you down there. On the way down there, if you enjoyed this, by the way, there is a subscribe button. Would appreciate that on the news of keeping me in business. That would help. I'll see you on stream, see you on another video. Have a great rest of your day, and happy FMing.